I am super excited to interview my next guest, who is from Canada, but she has a Scottish accent. I just found out she was from Scotland and traveled London, Zimbabwe, did you say? And just all over. Certified parenting coach and mindfulness coach, podcast host of, I love this title, The Parenting in the Thick of It show, founder of Your Parenting Partner. I love this title, parenting. I'm author of Parenting the Modern Teen, and this is what I'd like her to share with us: cracking the code to parenting your teen, the secret to parenting your teen. The secret to understanding, connecting, and communicating with your teen in a disconnected, distracted, and digital world. Everything that we are facing right now. We feel totally disconnected. Understand that Louise has not even, left your house, twice in a year, and she can't even.
Oh, no, I've been out of my house.
You've been out of your house, but no one has been in your house.
No, we've not entertained. No one's been in our house, and I've been into two other houses in about the last year. But I go out. Don't get me wrong.
You go out, but you can't even visit your neighbor, you said?
No, technically not. You're not allowed into anybody else's home. But I can go skiing and I can meet people skiing and we can go out to a restaurant. But technically, we should only be in a restaurant with our family. I technically would not be able to go and have dinner with you in a restaurant because you're not in my bubble.
Wow.
Yeah. So people are doing it all to various degrees. Obeying in different ways, and we've got through it. But the fact that I can still go outside and I can still go and ski and still do various things.
So the ski resorts are open, but you just can't. But tourists can't go there, right? Like we couldn't go there.
Oh yeah, there's tons of tourists here. The stores are open, the shops are open, the restaurants are open, the mountains open. So it's we're all fine.
That's good. That's good. So Louise Clarke, though, is a mom of 3, 15, 18, and 20. So you have the older kids, but do you think it's harder? Do you think a certain age group is harder? Or do you think parenting in general, no matter what age your child is challenging?
I think it has its challenges no matter what age. And, toddlers and teens are actually quite similar in terms of where their brains are. So it's no surprise that they challenge us a bit. But in terms of cracking the code, my kind of what underpins my viewpoint, my stance, the way I coach, the way I parent, the way I'm a mum myself, is that if I go back in time, I always used to look at my kids. It's my kids' problem. What are they doing or not doing and not listening and not this? And I was always looking at them, that they were making the mistakes. They weren't listening. They weren't doing whatever. They were being disrespectful and rude. And it was Dr. Shefali Sabari, who's the author of The Conscious Parent, The Awakened Family. She's now got a new book called A Radical Awakening. It was her that finally I had this, aha moment through her, because she kept saying, it's if we can shine the spotlight of attention on ourselves versus on our kids, and look at what needs fixing in us versus trying to fix them. Because she would go on to say the kids aren't broken. There's nothing wrong with our kids. They might be acting out, but it's probably age and stage appropriate for a lot of the time. And even if it's not, that's a chosen behavior in a given moment. What we have to do is be able to show up in control of ourselves, self-regulated, using boundaries, using connection, holding limits, dealing with the pushback. It's inevitable. We have to control ourselves in the face of whatever it is they choose to say or do, whether you have a 3-year-old, 8-year-old, 10-year-old, 20-year-old, 30-year-old. If what they say and do triggers us to such an extent that we become reactive and we react to them, we will not be able to meet their needs, because we will end up fighting with them, arguing with them, ignoring them, pushing them away. But we have to hold on to control of ourselves, and then we can parent them. What we try and do is control them, but we can't control another person. So we have to look at ourselves, fix ourselves, change how we're showing up, instead of trying to change them and force change on them. You try and force a strong-willed 5-year-old to do something. Good luck.
Right.
Try and force a teenager to stop using foul language, for example. Tell me, how do you do that? How do you stop a teenager using foul language without punishing them, rewarding them, bribing them? You can't. So you have to control yourself in the face of whatever they've said, or the toddler that's like just keeps getting out of bed, or keeps, I want this cup, not that cup. No, I don't want
Right.
milk.
Yeah, we've all done that.
No,
I
I
want the
don't
Red
want
Bull.
ketchup on my hot dog that way, mommy, and you scrape it off, and they've got you running circles around them because we can't control how we're showing up. So I coach parents and work with parents to help them change how it is they are showing up in the face of whatever the kids are doing. I often say to them, I actually don't care what your kids are doing. I care about how you show up in the face of it. What are your patterns? What is your reactivity? How do you handle it? What are your boundary setting skills?
Mhm.
How do you hold the limits? How do you deal with the pushback? Why do you take it personally? All these things. And when we actually start looking at that and changing how our energy and how we shift in our mindset, looking at our thoughts, we were discussing this earlier.
Mhm.
Like, what do I believe right now about my kid? Because that's going to paint the picture. What story have I got running in my head about the fact my 11-year-old will not do his homework and came home with an F? What story
Yes.
have I got in my head? Because that is going to influence how I deal with the 11-year-old with an F on his report.
Do you have a particular suggestion? I deal with, because I'm a tutor, I do come across a lot of Fs, a lot of parents who are just exasperated. So they take the video games away, or they have this screaming match because they cannot get their child to log on to distance learning, turn on their camera, complete their work. I mean, anything academic. So instead of shouting, what
Well,
is your,
shouting doesn't work, yelling doesn't work, nagging doesn't work.
so what works?
Criticizing, judging. And what works is to show up open, curious, compassionate, empathetic, and embody their experience. Get on their page. I'll tell you
Mhm.
what works. See them, hear them, understand them, help them feel safe. Look at the behavior as a means of communicating and go beneath the behavior. What's driving the behavior? Why is he not able to get more than an F? What was going on? How can I help versus just being, the problem is it triggers fear in us,
Yes.
right? So we have to be aware of when we are fearful, because when we're fearful, we go into fight, flight, or freeze, and usually we fight and resist because we don't want the F.
Mhm.
But now there's an F, so we have to accept, okay, he's got an F. Where will we go from here? Well, an E would be better, or a D would be better, if it goes straight through.
Right.
We don't have to go to the A. How's he feeling about it? What happened? Did he, so if we get curious versus just making assumptions that he's lazy and unmotivated and was on his phone and didn't come out of his room and ignored there and wasn't on the camera and didn't do it complete, that's all assumptions. We might know it from yesterday, but
Mhm.
today's a different day. We make assumptions. So if we can enter each moment as it is and be open and curious to what's going on here and be a little bit more compassionate, less judgmental, less critical, get working on the fear, like don't let fear drive you. It will absolutely help. But what we resort to is when we're triggered, we resort to our default pattern, which is to come down on them hard, to nag, yell, shout, blame. If you just worked a bit harder, and if you'd been in class, this wouldn't have happened, and if you just listened to me and put your phone away while you're studying, this wouldn't have. What good is that going to do?
Exactly.
Because it's not going to make them get a pass overnight. But what actually will help him is for you to help him understand that you see him and hear him, you love him, and this is a hurdle, and we'll get through it. And be in it with him, not against him. So the kid feels like, okay, they're not mad. Yeah, I made a mistake. Mistakes are okay. Let's change. How can we move through this together and get to a more desirable outcome?
So when parents, because I think sometimes parents feel, well, I don't know how to do the work, so I can't help them. But you're saying just being there emotionally is all
Yeah,
that's needed and
absolutely.
make
And
them
not
feel heard.
berate, not, we want to berate them for getting the F.
Hmm.
It's not going to help. They need encouraged at that stage, believe it or not. And
Hmm.
you might find it hard to be encouraging, but they're probably, any kid with an F is probably not feeling that good about themselves. And but the way they hide it is they go, I don't care. And
Right.
then we get triggered, like, you don't care? Well, you should care. And then you start arguing about the fact he doesn't care. Of course he cares. He cares deeply. When he goes, I don't care, that's just his defense saying, I don't care, because it's easy for him to go, I don't care. It's much harder for him to go, I actually care. And I'm really pissed off that I made this mistake. And I really wish I'd worked harder. He's got to feel very safe to say that.
Hmm.
Because if he says it, usually we'll say, yeah, you're right, you should have worked harder.
Exactly. And then that doesn't, it just creates resentment and not a
Yeah.
safe environment.
And then it makes them feel bad about themselves. So really, as I said at the beginning, we have to change how we interact with them in that situation and not default to the old way, what we used to do, and try and find a new way, and a way that is conducive to meeting the needs and getting the outcome you want. Because you can't control them, you can't force them. You can, but only through usually negative forms of discipline. The only way you can change them is to change the way you interact with them.
And you know what I'd love to hear your feedback on is physical punishment. A lot of these parents really believe that the old style parenting works because, I mean, pain will usually get them to do what they want. But can you share what is your take on that?
I'm not a fan of punishment. It's punitive, it bypasses the lesson, it breeds resentment, it hardens their heart. It'll only make them want to manipulate the truth the next time, because they know what's going to happen if they dare tell the truth. So I don't think it's conducive to them developing any of the life skills we want them to develop. But I'm absolutely not saying that everything should just be okay and we just give into it all and allow it all. I think we have to help our children learn from their mistakes through the use of consequences. And sometimes we don't even have to, give a consequence, because the consequence will naturally play out. If they get an F and they don't want the F, then the F's the consequence for them.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
don't need to be punished for it. If we punish them, it's not conducive to them actually wanting to change. Whereas if there's consequence, the consequence is this, but we're going to support him in that. We're going to say, I know it's really tough. Like, you made a mistake. How can we stop that from happening again? So, for consequent to differentiate consequences for punishment,
Hmm.
you have to satisfy, I always say simply, 5 R's. The consequence needs to be related and relevant to the crime, so to speak. This is if, you get the F, the F's the consequence for not doing the work, for not putting in effort. We don't need any more consequence. We don't need any more punishment. They got the consequence. No work, F. So related and relevant. This is if we are kind of having to come up with a consequence. It might be that they spent an hour, they blew their limits on their phone. They were supposed to be on their phone for an hour and they've been on their phone for 2 hours. So the punishment would be to take the phone away for an indefinite period of time. That's it. You blew the limit. You never listened to us. Give me your phone. Fight over the phone. That would be a punishment. Our energy is not positive. So we need to think of something that's related and relevant, that is respectful. In other words, our energy behind it, the words we choose, the tone, our body language is respectful in the way we construct the consequence. It needs to be reliable. In other words, if they keep blowing the limits on their phones, the same thing has to happen all over and over again. It needs to be reliable, something we can do easily, and it only needs to be it has to be reasonable. If it's unreasonable, it's moving into punitive, which will not teach them the lesson, because consequences are the relationship cause and effect. If
Hmm.
X, then Y. So the consequence for going over by an hour today on their phones and ignoring the limits would be that tomorrow they get an hour less. It's related and relevant. You go over by an hour, you've had an extra hour, you will not have an hour tomorrow. Totally reasonable, totally related. The way I do it is respectful. I'm really sorry, but you went over your time. You know it's an hour, and I'm going to have to take an hour away tomorrow, because you can't keep going over. Like, it's, you set the timer, you ignored the timer. See, my tone's kind, it's compassionate.
Yeah, you're not yelling.
And it's
What about
reliable.
what about the video games? I've had parents say that their kids are playing 5 hours of video games. If you're at work and your kid is supposed to be online for school, how do you deal with, I mean, that's 5 hours a day. It is becoming an addiction.
Well, yeah, I
What do
mean,
you,
this is in 15 minutes, and the time we've got, I could talk about this for a week.
but do you suggest them just pulling the video games until the grades go up? Just like a general,
Well, then you're using bribing and rewarding. You're saying,
yeah.
if you get the A, you'll get your video game back. No, that's not going to develop any intrinsic motivation.
I've had some parents say just get the D or just pass, because right now they're like 6 Fs. Is there something that they can do right away?
If the video game is absolutely 100% the distraction from doing the work,
Yes.
and it's up to us as parents to have to go, this is a problem.
Yeah.
We're going to have to manage this a bit better. You're struggling to manage it yourself, so let's try and manage it together. But we then put in limits, but we don't make sure that the kids are living within them, because it's hard for us, and we seem to think that they can just set the timer and go, oh, my timer's gone, I'm going to get off.
Exactly.
That would be like saying in the middle of a movie, you know what, Karen, you got to switch it off. But I'm not finished. And I'm not saying they get to finish every game, but the way in which we is key. We also have to recognize that these platforms are highly persuasive, highly manipulative, and with the best will in the world, they're hard to get off. We know how hard it is to ignore our phones when it goes ding, and we think, oh, is that my friend? I'll just have a look. It's so hard for them. So we need to be compassionate towards it. As we get deeper and deeper into these digital challenges and the mess we've got ourselves into, and I say we've got ourselves into, we buy the phones, we pay for the plans, and we give the very thing that causes the most disconnection in the most families, we give it to our kids. Whose problem is this? It's my problem. It's my fault that my kids, it's my fault my youngest is on his phone too much. It's not his, he's 15. He thinks this thing's great. It's shiny, it's persuasive, it's luring. I feel good when I'm on it. I feel crap when I'm off it, but actually I feel crap when I'm on it and crap when I'm off it. They're in a mess.
Yes.
Anxiety's through the roof, depression's through the roof. I think we've got ourselves into a holy mess over these phones. And I think it's up to us to do something about it by setting limits, holding the limits, and helping our kids live within those limits. And it means we have to be the kind reminder and the compassionate, caring parent reminding versus yelling at them and shouting at them to get off it. Then I think that's what we have to do. And then I'm more of a fan of using these routers that block the
Wi-Fi, the access to Wi-Fi.
The Wi-Fi, or they give certain, you can be on Snapchat for an hour a day or this for an hour a day, and then it's off. But the kids are so smart. The kids they've got fingerprints constructed. Our fingerprints, they hack the codes because they can't live without this thing now. And I think it's a really serious problem, but I think we have to start by having limits on it. We have to protect their sleep. We have to get phones out their bedrooms, devices out their bedrooms, make sure at least they're in their rooms with the lights out or even with the lights on for the amount of time that your kid needs. Most kids are chronically sleep deprived. They say, the parents say, no, but she needs it for an alarm. I'm like, no, go to the drugstore and buy an old-fashioned alarm clock. No child needs a phone in their room. And so start with some of that. And make sure that they're off screens an hour before their bed. Make sure they're getting sleep. It's a basic requirement of being a human. Most kids are chronically sleep deprived. So, start with the basics, get the sleep, get boundaries around it, make sure they're getting some sleep. You can't force them to go to sleep, but you can make the environment conducive to going to sleep and creating patterns and routines that are conducive to them getting the sleep they need so their brains develop in the way that they need. And then taking the phone away while they're doing their homework, maybe. But not like, give me your phone. It's like, what? The phone's a major distraction here. Let's try half an hour. Put your phone there for half an hour and try and do some work without it. Then go check it. But every situation is different, Karen. I mean, some parents will be like, well, my kid's only on their phone for an hour. No, my kid's on their phone for 10. My kid won't do their homework without their phones. Oh, my kid's got a bit of homework. But you have to look at your situation and what you need, taking into consideration your kid's temperament, your temperament, the moment, so many balls in the air. We can't just create a recipe cookie cutter approach for everybody's individual situations, but we can big picture create structure that is conducive to them being able to thrive, go to school, meet minimum requirements, take some exercise, get their sleep, eat, present them with vaguely healthy eating choices. You can't make them eat it.
Right.
Tell me how you make a 5-year-old eat broccoli. They're not geese. They're not geese. You can't force feed them. So you can only change what you're doing and present things to them. And hopefully, they take them, and not punishing them if they don't, having consequences for certain things, limits, holding the limits, dealing with the pushback, changing how we show up in the face of it all. It's the only thing we can do.
Oh, it would sound so much stress relieving because, I think the stress is feeling like you need to control your child. And like you said, when you can't, which we really don't have control, then you feel, you have to up your game. And I think that's when tempers flare, right? Your voice rises, and then you think.
And nobody likes to be controlled, because what happens if you're being controlled by someone, you basically don't feel they trust you.
Yes.
Therefore, you feel incapable. So when we try and do things for our kids or do their homework, do you know how awful it must feel to go to school knowing that you didn't do the homework, and then they get a decent mark and they're sitting there going, God, I didn't even do it. So how do they feel? Incapable, because mom's done too much. If we do too little, they'll feel incapable. So we need to balance it. How much help do they need? How can I ignite them to start and then let them run with it, and not check everything they do that's incorrect? Let them hand in an assignment with some, bad punctuation and all that. Let it go so they get the marks back and they see. Like we want to rescue them a lot of the time. And we do too much for them a lot of the time. But there's a balance. We can't do too little, but we can't do too much.
So it's finding the balance. It sounds like practicing like compassion versus criticism.
Yeah, absolutely. And is it easy? Do I sit here all like, oh, look at her, she's got it all right? No, absolutely not. I know what I should be doing, but it's hard because we get caught up in the emotions of it all. You, Karen, you'll be able to sit with your students, and if they don't do the work, you'll be like, it's okay, you had a lot on. But when your daughter doesn't do her work, it's not okay, because we get caught up in the drama of it. So I get caught up in the drama with it. I sound like I'm like, oh my God, she's like, how does she do it? I don't get it all right all the time. I'm human. I'm a mum, just like everyone listening. But I know what I should be working towards. And when I screw up, I'm like, okay, I screwed up. I screw up less and less, but when I do, and I will, I acknowledge it. I accept I've made a mistake. I apologize. I try and repair. And I try and catch myself before I, go down the wrong path, before I become the raging beast of a mum that's triggered and fearful and fighting them and arguing, and it doesn't work.
Do you think parents should apologize if they do have that, that beast comes out and they end
Yes,
up saying things that they don't mean and they destroy their child's self-esteem, basically? Do you think that it's
absolutely.
important?
Really important, but only if the apology comes with no but.
Mm,
In other words, see, what we do is we go, I'm really sorry I spoke to you like that. I really should never have shouted at you for the fact you got that F. But if you put more effort in and you come off your phone, I wouldn't be shouting.
exactly.
Don't apologize then.
Then it's not a worthy apology. You might as well not
No,
apologize.
because you're basically saying it's your fault that I lost it. If you're going to apologize, you own your part, not theirs, your part. And you say, I am really sorry for the way I handled that. It was unacceptable. I can totally understand why you feel the way you do, and I'm really sorry.
Wow, we should all have that written and just look at that whenever we feel the need.
Then you re-enter and say, okay, how can we make this a bit better? Right? And not say, just don't go there that they it was them. No, how can you help them? You're not going to help them by then just blaming them for the fact that their behavior made you lose your shit.
Right.
That's not going to help.
I think that's what I'm hearing a lot of moms say, you know what, but if they didn't do ABC, then I wouldn't have to react.
Absolutely. And I do that as well at times. I go, you know why I'm having to ask you 20 times? Because I'm asking you 20 times. Please just do it the first time. I have the same thing. But why am I asking 20 times? That's my problem, not theirs. They're teenagers. They are not thinking, oh, I'll just go and put my mug away and I'll put it in the dishwasher. No, they haven't even noticed the mug and the wrapper and the hoodie and the this and the stuff and the. They don't live in the same world as we do. They do, but they don't see it through the same lens. So,
Wow.
so it just so
Oh, I'm sorry, I just lost you.
yourself. Like, how can I change?
So it sounds
You know,
like, yeah,
if
just
you're nagging
owning
all the
it.
time, how do
I'm
you change
sorry?
that? Own it.
Yes, owning
We
it.
need to change. We need to own it. We co-create the patterns that are in our homes. It's not just our kids that create the patterns. We do. My interaction creates a pattern with their interaction. So I can own my piece, and then in me changing my piece, it'll bring about changes in how they go about things as well. So rather than me asking 20 times, I'll ask once and make sure it's done.
And then when they don't do it, then you just administer the consequence, or?
If they don't do it, then if you ask them to put their stuff away, the coffee table's full of all their crap.
Yes.
You ask them to put it away and you go, hey, you guys, you need to clean the coffee, you put it all away. And they go, yeah. And then we move away. We go to our desk or the laundry or the kitchen.
Oh, so you do it right then and there.
Yes. And then if they say, but I'm busy, say, I know you're busy. I know it sucks, but you need to do it now. Because if you don't do it now, unfortunately, we'll all get distracted. I hate you. This sucks. You're
Yeah.
right in the middle of this. You hate it when I interrupt you. I know I do, but you need to go do it. And then they'll go do it. And then they'll sit down, continue what they're doing, and forget about it all. And so can you, because now the coffee table's clear.
Wow. That is very enlightening, because you don't realize you remind and then you do walk away because you're in the middle of your to-do list.
Yeah.
And you just think, oh, they'll do it, even though inside you do think, I'm going to have to repeat this.
And then we're not clear with the instructions. You will leave the house and say, hey, could you guys do the dishwasher?
Yeah.
Thanks. We come home.
And it's not done.
And I go, dishwasher's not done. And they go, no, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And then I realize I didn't tell them I need it done in the next hour or I need it done before you go to school. I just like, oh, could you do the dishwasher? And I think they'll do it when I need it doing. No, they're busy. They're doing their thing. They're not thinking of the dishwasher. So we need to be really clear and we need to ask nicely and we need to stay close to them until they make a move to go and do it. Even if it means they are mad with us, wild with us, shout at us, whatever. We just sit there and go, you need to do it.
And not shout back.
And not shout back. Yeah, not take it personally, not go, you're so disrespectful. No, you're actually being respectful to you when you're asking nicely and you're holding the limit. That's respect. You're protecting what you value. The minute you lose your cool, you are being disrespectful to yourself, and then they'll reflect it. You start yelling and nagging at them, they're more likely to yell it back.
So are you saying that a lot of the disrespect that happens in the household, they're role modeling maybe, or it's a lot of it is just the way their brains aren't developed, but don't feed into it. Because I think when we feel disrespected, we feel the need to call them on it. But
Yeah, absolutely. But are they being disrespectful? And I mean, my son said, Mom, with all due respect, you were really disrespectful. Like you're right. And he goes, how it's really hard for me when you come in and you're not very nice. And you're like, he said, you were really disrespectful to me there. And I actually had really not done much. And so often I think if we really are able to take a good look at ourselves, we are not often very kind and respectful to our kids. I'm generalizing, but we're disrespectful enough. And they are our mirrors. They mirror us. So if they're disrespectful and rude, chances are they've imitated someone well. Us.
And so it's not, so do you think, parents say, well, but I'm the parent, hear that I'm the parent, so I can speak the way that I choose
How
to.
did that feel when you were a child, when your mom said, I'm the parent, don't you speak to me like that? I can speak to you however I want, but don't you dare speak to me like that. How did that feel?
Yeah.
I hated that. I vowed to never do it. My dad used to say, do as I say, not as I do. And he'd sit and do it, and we weren't allowed to do it. And I'm like, how's that fair? Am I just a minion because I'm 5 and you're 30? No, I don't think that's fair. I mean, it depends what you believe. But I don't believe that parenting model is a respectful model. But I default to it because it's how I was raised. And we often, we hear ourselves and think, oh my goodness, I sound just like my mum. Because we default to the way the patterns are ingrained in us. And it's hard to break those old habits. They die hard. And so we often do the same or go polar opposite. If we had really strict parents, either we're really strict when we're under duress and pressure, we go all strict and authoritarian, or we go absolute polar opposite and we're totally permissive and we go, no, yes, okay, yes, just this one time. We just let them walk all over us. So we have to look at ourselves.
Wow, this has been very, very enlightening. I'm so glad that you gave me this opportunity to interview you. Can you share how people can find you and give us that book title again? I mean, because you have, your parenting partner, right? How can people reach you, Louise?
So through the website, yourparentingpartner.com. And on the website, like any website, there's about my coaching. I have group coaching programs. I have one-on-one coaching that I do with parents. I have my book, Parenting the Modern Teen. It's only $5.90. It's packed full of really useful information. I've sold over 100,000 copies. I have a podcast called Parenting in the Thick of It. There's over 500,000 downloads and 501 episodes on the podcast.
Wow.
So all along my website, on the tabs, you'll see podcast, book, courses, coaching. So you can get everything through the website, yourparentingpartner.com, and my email, louise@yourparentingpartner.com. So that's where you can get hold of me.
Thank you so much, Louise. I really, really appreciate it. I am going to take it to heart because I think, we don't realize that we do, we don't think that it's us. We think that, okay, as long as I fix them, but if parents realize, we have no control over them, but we do have control over how we react and just choosing to be compassionate. I don't think a lot of us even think of that. We just want to get that dishes done or the homework done, and we don't even remember what it was like to be in their shoes.
Yeah. Use a bit of empathy and compassion and be curious.
Be curious. Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much. Enjoy your day, and I will keep in touch.
Yes, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Take care. Bye.